Good morning, welcome back to Erasmus TV. International students have more symptoms of depression and fear of corona. That is one of the conclusions from research by our guest, Matthias Wieser. He's a professor, clinical psychology at the university. My other guest is calling from home. Her name is Merve Demir. She is one of the students responsible for the chat at Are You OK Out There? It's a university platform that aims to help out students with mental but also other kind of health problems. Welcome to you both. Matthias, thank you for coming here. You have been researching fear related to corona since the first day the lockdown in the Netherlands began. Can you already tell us some conclusions? Do you already have some conclusions?
Yes, we do have some preliminary conclusions. So first of all, we did this research online. So this was an online survey where we asked the students with standardized clinical questionnaires about their anxiety symptoms, depression symptoms. But we also asked specifically about their anxiety of getting corona, getting infected, and also how they behaved in terms of corona. So if they avoided going out, or if they did this famous hamsteren, the Dutch hoarding behavior. And what we already know from our preliminary results, we have now 850 students in our sample. So that's quite a lot. We know that the international students show more symptoms on general anxiety. So they have more anxiety, intolerance of uncertainty, also symptoms of depression, but also specifically the anxiety of getting corona or also avoiding behavior is higher in international students.
Yeah, that international students are experiencing more mental health problems during the coronavirus and have more complaints than Dutch students was also shown by a survey the university did among employees and students. Do you have an explanation for this difference between internationals and Dutch students?
Well, we know from earlier research, of course, pre-corona already, that international students have more sources of stress. Because especially when you're a first-year student, international student coming to the Netherlands, to Rotterdam, then you face a new culture, you have to adapt to a new lifestyle. And this is, of course, a major source of stress. So we know that international students in general have more sources of stress. And then it's not really surprising that if a major event, a stress event like the corona crisis happens, that this kind of tops the stress level. So the difference exists already before, and we have also data from before corona showing that international students have more stress. But then this event happens, and this adds up to their already higher stress levels. So that's one of the main conclusion, of course, and explanation.
Yes. Mara, if I can ask you, because you're working at the chat function of the platform Are You OK Out There? Do you recognize the story Matthias is telling us?
I think it's difficult to say because, of course, I have not spoken to that many students as, the survey was held with, because it was 850 students, I guess. And we also have like Dutch students, but also international students. So I think it's difficult to say that like more international students have problems or seek more contact. But I can imagine that international students experience more stress because, for example, during the corona crisis, they had to go back to their home country or they are here alone. So yeah, I can imagine where it could come from, but I have not seen it specifically at the chat.
What kind of questions do you get from students or perhaps remarks from students while you're working?
Mm-hmm. So we get different kinds of questions. The most questions are about that they feel uncertain or stressed about the future, or they want a lot of tips and tricks regarding more motivation or to get more focus. There are also students who just want to have a chat or want to share an experience because they're not feeling well at the moment, or just because they want to see what we are doing behind the chat.
And how can you help them?
Well, first of all, just by being yourself. In the end, we are students ourselves as well and not professionals. And I think it kind of creates a connection between the both of you, because as a student myself, I also know how it is, for example, to sometimes have less focus. So yeah, that way you can help a student, but also of course by listening, asking questions, really find out what the need is of the student, because some students really just want to tell their story. Other students really want specifically tips and tricks. Then we can refer them to the platform Are You OK Out There? And yeah, in case of severe problems, we can refer them, for example, to a student advisor or to a university psychologist. So yeah, it's most important that we really find out what the student wants, and that way we can help them further.
Yeah. Mara already mentioned it shortly. Well, mental health problems or stress complaints aren't new among students. But if you look at the results from your survey, does it cause worry with you?
Well, first of all, I have to say that in our study, we can, of course, not really tell if someone is in like a clinical range of, let's say, anxiety or depression, because we asked like questionnaires where we summarize a lot of items about anxiety or depression. So we cannot really tell if someone is clinically depressed. So that's, of course, we have to take in consideration. What we see is if we compare the mean levels of anxiety and depression compared to pre-corona, and another student cohort, of course, then we see it is higher. So in general, the stress level, the depression level, the anxiety level is higher. And I think that's definitely something we as the university should also kind of monitor and be a little bit aware of, not worried, but aware of. And I think that's why it's very important to have these initiatives like the one...
like the platform Are You OK Out There?
Exactly. Yes. Because then, and we know from other research that exactly the support from peers can already help a lot and prevent students from getting from, let's say, preclinical stress, as we call it, to a really clinical condition of stress. So I think that's why it's really good to have these initiatives, and of course other initiatives monitoring the well-being and trying to focus on like low level but effective measures like giving social support.
Yes, but you're also a teacher, and you're also guiding people who are writing their master thesis and doing their master thesis researches. Do you see a change with students or a difference, perhaps, since this whole lockdown started?
Well, definitely. So the irony was that when the lockdown started, my blog, my teaching blog in psychology started, and the teaching blog is called Anxiety and Stress. So that was really like, my course has never been before so much attached to real life. So what we could see is in the beginning, for me, but for the students, for everyone, it was super stressful. We had to move to online teaching. So of course, the students had corona stress, online teaching stress, and the normal stress level, so a lot of stress. But then what you see over time is, of course, that most of the students adapt quite well. And what I think is really critical in the future is to really find out which students are not adapting very well and detect these students probably earlier by doing pre-screenings and then find out how we can support them. But from my own experience, and I don't have data yet, like the 850 students, we only asked once. From my own experience in supervision of students, it's really individual. Some people really adapt very well over time now. Of course, some things are also now clearer. We know a little bit more as in the beginning of the corona crisis. And there's some perspective that some things open up. The university will eventually open up. So some things are more clear that reduces stress. But we also have, of course, these individual stress profiles where students now sit still in some other country, cannot come back, and have difficulties just following courses, for example, because of bad online wireless LAN connections. So it's very individual, and that's, of course, something we should also try to monitor a little, and that's also what we are planning to do in the future with this cohort we have now.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're a student out there, and if you're here in the Netherlands and have struggles, or if you're back at home, wherever in the world it is, you can always reach out to students at Are You OK Out There? You might even have a chat with our Mara. Thank you so much all for watching. We will be back here on Thursday morning. Thank you.